discover how a humble maid revealed 5 incredible secrets that transformed the millionaire's bride. June stood in the grand entryway of the Carter mansion, the gleaming marble floors echoing with her footsteps as she adjusted the delicate lace collar of her uniform. Surrounded by opulence, she felt like an imposter in a world of wealth. Each day, she meticulously cleaned the opulent home of Ethan Carter, a self-made millionaire, while simultaneously dreaming of a life far removed from her current situation. She flicked her cloth over the ornate banister, wondering if the sheen of the wood could reflect the light of her unquenched ambitions. Her heart raced as she recalled the quiet dinners she spent with her family, huddled around a table that often had more empty space than food. They'd whispered about stories, tales of resilience that stoked the fires of determination burning quietly in her gut. She longed for authenticity, to be seen as more than just a maid. But as she dusted the intricately framed portraits of Ethan and his bride Sophie, she couldn't help but feel an aching sense of kinship with the chilly woman who wore sophistication like armor. Sophie's facade was flawless, yet June detected an invisible sorrow lurking behind her polished smile. Could it be that beneath the layers of wealth, they both shared a longing for true connection? The tension of her daily existence heightened when Sophie invited June to help prepare for a lavish charity gala, the type of glittering event that buzzed with life and filled spaces with influences far removed from June's humble background. This invitation felt like a door creaking open to a world she'd only glimpsed through the shadows. Nervous excitement twisted in her stomach. Was this a chance, or just another reminder of the boundaries separating their lives? As they caught up in the sprawling drawing room, busy arranging floral centerpieces and adjusting the lavish decor, June decided to speak from her heart. "Sometimes," she began, tentatively tracing the edge of an elegant vase, "the most beautiful relationships come when you drop the pretense, when you let people see your true self." Every word left her lips with a weight that made her muscles tense. She could feel the edges heat from the suppressed tension that had dogged her in the dusty halls of domesticity. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Each day spent with Sophie made June's heart thump louder against her rib cage, caught between rising camaraderie and ever-present insecurity. She could still taste the lingering spices from lunch as the tension escalated. Sophie's friends were often critical, emphasizing that June was a distraction from the polished life Sophie had constructed. Their eyes dripped with judgment when they looked at June, and a creeping fear stole over her that Sophie might choose to step away rather than confront the uncomfortable truth. At the gala, the chill in the air was palpable, threading an unseen tension through the crowd of glittering gowns and tailored suits. June lingered at the edges, her heart in her throat as whispers wrapped around her like a cold wind. They were about to weave into a narrative far beyond the mere logistics of event planning. A confrontation was brewing. Would Sophie rise to the occasion, fueled by the warmth of vulnerability they had shared? As voices rose louder amidst decadent canapes and sparkling champagne, sharp words sliced through the air, each one poised to lay waste to the bond they had carefully crafted. In that crucial moment, when Sophie stood at the crossroad of her safe, gilded cage and the raw authenticity June had illuminated, silence fell. The crowd's eyes were on her, waiting. Would she shatter the ice around her heart, or retreat into the poise of privilege? Sophie's breath caught in her throat as she faced the crowd, their expectant gaze an unyielding spotlight. June's heart pounded, and she felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. The weight of the moment pressed heavily upon them both. Would Sophie speak her truth, or retreat into the comfort of distance? As Sophie opened her mouth, the hesitation flickered in her eyes, battling against the fear of judgment. Time seemed to slow, and June's mind raced. This was not merely about Sophie. It was about their fragile bond, the delicate bridge they had forged between their disparate worlds. June clutched the edge of a nearby table, grounding herself but yearning to step forward. What if Sophie didn't embrace her authenticity? What would that mean for June's once hopeful ambitions? The thrill of possibility twisted into an ugly knot in her stomach. Suddenly, a sharp voice broke through the tension. "Sophie, darling, are you really going to let her hang around here after your big reveal?" A woman adorned in silks raised an eyebrow, snickering softly at June's understated uniform. The laughter in the room rippled like unease, feeding Sophie's discomfort. June's face flushed, and she felt the familiar sting of humiliation. Instinctively, her shoulders tensed, ready to retreat back into the shadows like she had so many times before. Yet, as she glanced at Sophie, the determination in her heart sparked anew. She thought of her family, her dreams, the stories that had shaped her resilience. This was not just about Sophie. It was about her fight for recognition, her fight to claim her place even if it was at the periphery. "Maybe it's time for you to choose, Sophie," June called out, her voice steady despite the chaotic energy swirling around her. "To let go of this act, this fear, and step into who you truly are. You deserve that." The words burned from her core, echoing through the silence. The crowd held its breath, a theater of privilege now captivated by the audacity of a simple maid. Sophie turned, surprise flashing across her features. In her gaze lay a mix of fear and curiosity, as if June had unlocked a hidden door she had long kept shut. "June," Sophie whispered, her voice fragile yet powerful. "Are you willing to stand with me?" With a nod, June took a single step forward, anchoring her place beside her. She felt like a timid wave crashing against mighty rocks, vulnerable yet insistent. She could see the moment ignite within Sophie, a flicker of defiance battling against the tide of societal expectation. The contemptuous laughter faded, replaced by whispers of intrigue. Would there be freedom in vulnerability? June's heart swelled as she realized this was more than just support for Sophie. It was a declaration of her own worth, a willingness to rise above the whispers. Ethan stepped forward, breaking the tension with an authoritative voice. "I invite you both to share your perspective. Speak your truth. We all deserve to be seen today." The words were a lifeline thrown into the tumult of the moment. The silence deepened, thick with suspense. June's eyes met Sophie's, a layering of understanding bridging the distance forged by wealth and position. Would Sophie embrace this moment of radical honesty and wield the power of their shared courage? Would both women emerge transformed, radiant in their authenticity? As the murmurs of the crowd swirled around them like anxious spirits, June inhaled deeply, steeling herself for the next revelation, ready to forge a new path no matter where it led. The intricate tapestry of their lives was about to unravel and weave anew. And with that collective breath, June realized, her own journey toward personal and professional development had just begun. Would she reclaim her narrative, or would the weight of expectation crush her spirit once more? The promise of what lay ahead sent a shiver down her spine, as the tension hung thick in the air, inviting transformation. June's heart raced as she felt the weight of the unbroken silence enveloping them. The apprehension brewed in the room like a thunderstorm, yet an unlikely sense of resolve began to unfurl within her. This was not just about Sophie finding her voice. It was also June's opportunity to dismantle the barriers that had long held her back. She took a deliberate breath, pushing against the hesitation that gnawed at her. "Sophie, it's time to choose authenticity. Not just for you, but for both of us." She felt exposed, her words hanging precariously in the air, yet something deep inside her flickered to life. This moment, charged with a raw intensity, spoke of transformation, not just for Sophie but for herself. Sophie's expression shifted from uncertainty to a burgeoning flame of determination. The laughter from before felt muted now, like echoes from another world. June could see the struggle on her friend's face, a reflection of her own insecurities mirrored back at her. Yet something had shifted. The tide was turning. "Okay," Sophie murmured, a mix of vulnerability and strength threading through her voice. "You're right. I can't hide behind this facade anymore." With that statement, Sophie stepped away from the podium that had symbolized her public persona and walked closer to June. The crowd, previously filled with judgment, watched with bated breath, curiosity ignited by a truth they had not anticipated. June felt the pulse of adrenaline within her as Sophie began to speak. Words poured out like a torrent, raw revelations that challenged the status quo and peeled back layers of expectation. June watched, transfixed, as her friend unearthed her truth, the stories of struggle, fear, and ultimately resilience. In that moment, June recognized her own narrative entwined with Sophie's. She began to imagine what her own truth might sound like. Her mind raced. What had she been afraid to voice? What stories were hidden behind the pointed looks she received or the whispers in hallways? June's pulse quickened as she confronted the gaps in her own narrative that had held her in mediocrity for too long. As Sophie's voice gained momentum, June took calculated steps closer to the front, her confidence infused by Sophie's bravery. "And it's not just unique to you, Sophie," she found herself saying, her voice cutting through the remnants of tension. "We all wear our masks while dreaming of greater things." The recognition of shared struggles filled June with empowerment. Perhaps she could be the one to highlight their collective stories, bridging the gap not just for herself, but for those around them. The crowd shifted uneasily. Their previous laughter morphed into murmurs of human connection and newfound understanding. June could see the sparks of recognition in the eyes of onlookers, their privileged bubbles starting to blur. She sensed the energy in the room beginning to shift. The tides of expectations might finally be breaking. As the conversation evolved, June's thoughts swirled with the possibility of harnessing her voice. There could be a future in which she could carve out a space for others like her, where stories could be shared without fear. That was a narrative worth pursuing. But with this realization came new questions that weighed on her. How would she navigate her own path moving forward? Would she have the strength to sustain this newfound commitment to her own truth, especially in a world that often silenced those from her background? The air felt electric as she locked eyes with Sophie, now radiant in her unapologetic authenticity. The crowd stood captivated, their collective consciousness shifting. Yet, just as hope was blooming, June felt a sense of dread loom over her. Would the support remain once they left this moment? The stakes were higher than ever, and she knew the fight for her voice had only just begun. There would be challenges ahead, and she would have to face them head-on. Would she rise to meet the demand of her emerging purpose, or allow the influences of her past to chain her to silence once more? As the murmur of the audience swelled, June took a resolute breath, determined to embrace the journey unfolding before her. The moment had ignited. The real question was how far she would be willing to go. And in that realization, she sensed the winds of change beckoning her toward an inevitable confrontation she had long avoided. The next step was upon her. The unraveling secret of what it would take to truly reclaim her power loomed closer than she could have imagined. The applause reverberated through the room, a tangible wave that crashed over June. Yet it felt like a distant echo as her mind raced. Sophie's emergence into authenticity sparked a flame inside her, but the fire fueled equally by fear and uncertainty. She watched as validation filled Sophie's once downtrodden gaze, crushing doubts with each cheer from the crowd. Yet, amidst the celebration, June's heart thudded with questions that ricocheted off the walls of her consciousness. Could she keep pace with this newfound momentum? Was her resolve strong enough to withstand the scrutiny that awaited her in the days ahead? As she absorbed Sophie's triumph, a stark realization dawned. The authenticity that shone in her friend also highlighted her own shadows. The temptation to slip back into the safety of silence tugged at her instincts. What would opening that door mean for her? The resistance was palpable, yet she felt a push, a mixture of gratitude and envy that surged through her veins. Would she truly allow this moment to slip idly away into the abyss of unvoiced hopes and dormant ambitions? As applause dissipated and the crowd began to disperse, the shadows of doubt circled ominously, whispering that to stay in the background would cost her dearly. With renewed intensity sparking in her veins, June ventured to the edge of the podium. She could almost feel the yearning in the air, the audience hungering for more depth and connection. "Thank you all for listening to Sophie," she began, her voice quaking with resolve. "It's time we step out of the shadows of our insecurities and face the truth of who we truly are." Each word reverberated with a weight that demanded acknowledgement. She could sense the crowd lean in. Curiosity piqued once more. Doubt quaked within her, but she pressed on, fueled by an urgency to share. "My life has been spent in a cycle of being what others expected of me. Labeled as invisible, I often felt like mere wallpaper, an accessory to the conversations around me. But I refuse to let that be my legacy." The words flowed like a rising tide, redemptive and fervent. Each syllable lifted another layer of burden that had long been tethered to her. In that moment, she didn't just speak to the crowd, but to herself, reclaiming each fragment of her narrative that had been drowned in a sea of doubt. She allowed herself to feel the weight of her breathing, the flutter of a heartbeat that felt like burgeoning strength. Her self-reflection cracked open like an egg, revealing hidden potential that she had long ignored. Suddenly, the sense of discomfort morphed into a challenge. She hadn't planned for this, hadn't scripted the emotions swirling within. But what if vulnerability was the foundation of her invitation? What if her struggles could weave a connection? With each passing second, June could visualize a pathway unfolding before her, illuminated by the honesty she had yearned to express. But just as clarity settled upon her, a nagging thought crept in. What if Sophie failed to sustain this newfound strength? How fragile was their burgeoning commitment to authenticity in the face of a world that often demanded conformity? June's eyes darted among the crowd, searching for solace on familiar faces, yet uncertainty loomed large, threatening to overshadow her moment of triumph. Taking a breath, June steeled herself against the worry. She had stepped away from complacency and toward a fierce determination. The question was no longer if she could sustain this growth, but how. The answers began to crystallize. More than speaking her truth, she would need to protect it, nurture it, and share it deliberately. Just as she felt the ground beneath her solidify, a figure slipped through the crowd. The whisper of doubt materialized in the form of an old acquaintance known for their cynicism. A confrontation loomed closer, one that could either propel her forward or drag her into an abyss of self-doubt. June locked eyes with the figure, recognizing the challenge that awaited her. The time had come not just to reclaim her power, but to defend it against the very forces that had once silenced her. This would not be easy, but whether she crumbled under pressure or rose to meet it was a narrative she now controlled. Determination ignited a spark deep within her as she faced the storm approaching. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but what she did next could change everything. Would she rise to the occasion, or would her scars become her prison once more? June took a step forward, determined to discover the truth of her own resilience, as the inevitable confrontation loomed closer than she had anticipated. With every heartbeat, June could feel the weight of the moment intensifying. She stood at the edge of her resolve, acutely aware that this intersection could define her path, either toward liberation or retreat. The figure moving through the crowd drew closer, an amalgamation of nostalgia and dread. "June," came a sardonic voice that sliced through the ambient sounds. "I didn't know you had it in you to speak up. Who knew wallpaper could find its way into the spotlight?" It was Marcus, a voice from her past that resonated with critical jabs and half-hearted laughs. Memories of their shared history flushed her cheeks with heat, a mingling of shame and defiance churning within her. "Funny," she managed to reply, our eyes locking. "I've decided I'd like to be painted instead, less hiding." Each word stepped over her trepidation, summoning renewed courage. Yet, The echo of his laughter, a sound draped in doubt, lingered like a storm cloud. You think people are ready for that? People want simple, neat packages. They don't care about the real mess. As June mused over the implications of his words, she felt her internal defenses rising. She had spent too long succumbing to simplicity, a bubble of compliance that was now about to burst. The question wasn't merely whether she could stand firm, but whether she had the clarity to articulate her truth, to turn the mess into meaning. Maybe they will care, or maybe they won't, she shot back. But I can't live a life dictated by what others want to see. There was a flicker in Marcus's eyes, a mix of surprise and something darker, a fear she had once mirrored. He took a step forward, inches between them, testing the waters of confrontation. You know, those who speak too loudly tend to leave a wake of bitterness behind. It doesn't always end well. June inhaled sharply. Was this lingering specter of cynicism meant to intimidate her back into silence? How many times had she kneeled to the weight of similar sentiments? No more. If you want to dwell in the shadows of fear, that's your choice, she replied, her voice steadying. But I won't be defined by your limitations any longer. An unfamiliar warmth flooded her as she recognized the power of her own voice embracing her truth. Around them, the crowd had stilled, an audience ensnared by the unexpected drama unfolding. They were collectively suspended in anticipation. Hadn't they wished for this moment, a chance to witness its rawness? Marcus tilted his head, a smirk curling on his lips. And what do you plan to do next? You're treading on a tightrope. One wrong step, and you know you'll fall. An unsettling thought surfaced. What if he was right? What would it take to truly land on solid ground? But instead of letting the fear creep into her heart, June began to visualize a different outcome. A steep climb rather than a precarious fall. I plan to walk this tightrope with intention, she declared, each word laced with a newly discovered fierceness. To embrace the risk and own every step. The air thickened with unspoken challenges, each person attuned to the shifting tides of June's burgeoning strength. Marcus's expression morphed, revealing traces of unease. His foundation rattled under the weight of her defiance. So you think this is it? That you've got it all figured out? No, June replied, shaking her head slowly. But I'm done letting those doubts dictate the narrative. She felt the eyes of the crowd weave together a fabric of anticipation, a silence echoing the unfolding story of a woman stepping out of the margins. If she could weather this slight storm, perhaps there were stronger winds to face ahead, professional truths that would threaten to shake her newfound resolve. She had tasted the blend of vulnerability and strength. Now, it lingered on her tongue like fresh ambition. Maybe, she continued, absorbing the electric atmosphere. Maybe this is just the beginning, the true test of my authenticity and willingness to grow. With a swirl of deep-seated emotions and newly charted aspirations, June recognized this moment wasn't just about confronting Marcus. It was about discovering hidden aspects of herself that had long remained buried, her drive, her tenacity, and an unwavering commitment to authenticity. As she stepped off the podium, the room crackled with hushed excitement. A distinct understanding rippled through the onlookers. She could feel her resolve hardening, ready to tackle the next layer of self-discovery waiting just around the corner. But lurking in her thoughts was a critical concern. How would she respond when the world demanded she sacrifice that authenticity for acceptance? The answer hung just out of reach, as the landscape of her evolution unfurled before her in intricate, uncertain patterns. As she made her way through the crowd, the palpable tension from her confrontation with Marcus transformed into an undercurrent of exhilaration. Each step resonated with a newfound purpose, but that pulse of determination coursed alongside an unsettling doubt. The adrenaline that had propelled her to speak her truth now ebbed, revealing a chasm of uncertainty. What awaited her beyond this moment of defiance? June weaved through the mingling attendees, her thoughts spiraling. Was it wise to challenge Marcus? Had she overstepped, awakened something in him that he might react to vindictively? She shook her head, dismissing the concerns. She was not a child, nor was she someone available for reshaping by the doubts or fears of others. This was her life, her narrative to craft. As she sidestepped a knowing glance aimed her way, June realized all this uncertainty wasn't just hers to bear. More than her own transformation, she sensed the stirrings in those around her. Here was an audience grappling with their own expectations, responsibilities, and dreams. Standing on that podium had articulated not only June's dissatisfaction, but also tapped into a widespread yearning for authenticity. She needed to embrace this engaged audience, not as critics, but as potential collaborators in their growth. Perhaps, she mused, her journey could serve as a catalyst for others. But how? The question loomed large, demanding an answer that would require more than just the courage to speak her mind. The revelation struck as she caught sight of a group huddled behind the refreshments table. Each face bore a distinct combination of admiration and astonishment, appetites delayed by the unfolding drama. In that moment, it wasn't just Marcus she needed to confront. It was herself, this newfound version who desired deeper connection and robust personal stakes beyond her internal battles. Deciding that a plan was necessary to galvanize this energy, June turned her thoughts to practicalities. What tangible steps could she take to cultivate the authenticity she had just begun embodying? Retrieving a pen and napkin from a nearby table, she began scribbling ideas. Workshops on self-advocacy, seminars inviting dialogue on vulnerability as a strength. She could create spaces for discussion, layering her voice with insights from others and harnessing their experiences too. Would they dare to join? June, came a soft voice, interrupting her reverie. It was Caroline, a co-worker she hadn't expected to see here. I couldn't help but overhear. June's cheeks warmed, but she made no effort to hide the napkin. If anyone could strike a balance between genuine support and advice, it was Caroline. Is this your plan? Caroline gestured to the ink marks on the paper. To help others step into their own light? Something like that. June nodded. I've been so focused on hiding from my voice, and I think there's a potential for something bigger here. I want to pave that path for others. Just be mindful of the backlash, Caroline warned, her brow furrowing. Not everyone would welcome the change. Those familiar words washed over June like a wave she thought she had conquered. Yet, with each sound, a clarity simmered below. The challenge, for her, was less about seeking validation and more about weaving a tapestry of resilience with those willing to embrace their truths, however messy they might be. I won't let fear dictate my path, June affirmed softly, yet with resolve. A fire ignited within her. She began drafting a list of potential topics and formats, all while envisioning a space conducive for genuine connections. Each word crafted an arc toward growth, her own and that of others. With newfound clarity, she determined to iterate on an idea that had first felt frightening. This undertaking wouldn't just assert her voice, it would unite others' voices into a symphony of shared truths, cracking open a culture already begging for authenticity. The energy in the air thickened as she envisioned the trials ahead. Would she truly have the strength to guide this space? Would Marcus, with all his skepticism, become a thorn in her side? The prospect of such confrontation loomed larger, tinged with both uncertainty and excitement. June sighed. She wasn't anywhere near having it all figured out, but perhaps it was time to step into those professional uncertainties with the same fervor she had found in addressing Marcus. With a collective voice echoing in the back of her mind, she reached for that potential, and a question emerged stronger than the rest. What sacrifices would she be forced to make to stay true to herself amidst the impending trials? As she resolved to face those challenges head-on, the crowd around her buzzed with an energy that mirrored her own. Together, they were on the precipice of a storm that could just as easily lift them to new heights or destroy their evanescent ambitions. With the next chapter of her journey unfolding, June felt the sharp twinge of doubt overshadowed by emergent determination. The real test lay ahead. Her authenticity was about to clash with forces she hadn't anticipated. The weight of her resolve pushed June forward. She embraced the energy swirling around her, no longer a mere observer, but a catalyst preparing to ignite conversations long suppressed by propriety and fear. Ideas danced in her mind, weaving together aspirations that felt both audacious and vital. Each notion detailed on that crumpled napkin breathed life into a mission: to establish a platform where voices like hers would echo, where vulnerability was not a liability but a strength. As June surveyed the faces surrounding her, she noticed hidden stories lurking in their eyes. She understood they too were on the brink of transformation. They simply needed permission to unleash it. Questioning her intentions, she realized this wouldn't merely be about her empowerment. It was a collective journey demanding courage, sincerity, and perhaps unyielding honesty. But could she provide that safe space? The thought lingered, prompting her to ponder the practicalities. What if she invited them into this vision? She could harness the collective wisdom present, shifting the narrative from solitary struggle to shared experience. Hey, would you be interested in brainstorming a series of workshops? June found herself asking Caroline, catching her off guard. Workshops? You mean like you just spoke about? Caroline's face lit up, encouragement mingled with curiosity. Exactly. I want to create something real, something constructive where we can talk about our challenges and triumphs. Count me in. Caroline tapped her pen against her chin, already thinking ahead. It seems like a natural extension of what you just did up there. A surge of enthusiasm coursed through June. With Caroline's support, the solidity of her vision began to take shape. They bounced ideas back and forth, sketching outlines for potential sessions that addressed topics like overcoming workplace intimidation, paving pathways to assertiveness, and breaking down the stigma surrounding vulnerability. But with momentum came questions that clawed at the edges of her resolve. What topics would resonate? How would they construct a safe environment while dealing with backlash? Would Marcus see this as an opportunity to undermine her efforts? Discomfort ricocheted inside her at the thought of his looming skepticism. She had drawn a line in the sand, but now the consequences of that line began to ripple ominously through her thoughts. Was she prepared to handle resistance not just from him, but from others who thrived in the shadows of the status quo? Drawing a deep breath, June let her focus return to her sketch of topics. Vulnerability as a leadership tool, resilience in the face of critique, speaking up, the art of self-advocacy. Each title felt like a step closer to creating something impactful. The realization that these sessions could truly offer others a lifeline pushed her onward. If she could simply guide a few individuals towards empowerment, it would ripple outwards, igniting change that she might never personally witness. A soft whisper of doubt nudged her again. What if her initial engagement wasn't enough? What if the conversations she sought to inspire fell flat, or worse, became fodder for ridicule? The idea paralyzed her momentarily, until she remembered the question that had sparked her confrontation with Marcus in the first place. Wasn't this all about living authentically, despite the fear of rejection? June steeled herself against the unease. This endeavor had to be more than just words. It needed to reflect action grounded in authenticity. It would require a vulnerability she had yet to fully tap into, a willingness to confront not only those who opposed her, but fundamentally challenge her own limitations. With renewed determination, she glanced at Caroline. Let's start creating an outline, and once we're ready to roll this out, we'll reach out to others in our network. Then we can really build momentum. As they began to plan, the growing excitement built around them felt like a shared pact, a commitment to navigate the vulnerable, tumultuous waters ahead. But was it truly enough to fend off the potential backlash from Marcus? Or would his presence threaten to eclipse any progress they made? With these questions swirling, June felt the urgency sharpen. The stakes were higher than she had initially grasped. The time had come not just for self-exploration, but for direct confrontation. She could no longer ignore Marcus, nor this daunting challenge. Her pulse quickened as she considered her next steps. How long could she delay the inevitable? The shadows of doubt loomed, but with each passing moment, she felt the weight of her purpose grow heavier, propelling her into the depths of her potential. If she wished to create the change she envisioned, she would need to confront Marcus directly, and the time to do so was fast approaching. Would it solidify her mission or bring her crashing back to reality? June felt a shift in the air, the lingering aroma of coffee and camaraderie filling the small room as she and Caroline sketched out their ideas. Each passing moment amplified her urgency, an insistent reminder that her vision couldn't remain an abstraction. It needed to be given life. But the specter of Marcus loomed large, his influence a murky cloud on her horizon. "What if we set a date to launch our first workshop?" Caroline suggested, her voice imbued with an infectious optimism that made June's heart race. June's mind recoiled at the idea. "But we don't have everything ready. What if it falls flat? What if no one shows up?" Caroline leaned forward, her brow furrowed in determination. "You can't let fear stop you, June. Every great idea starts with a leap into the unknown. Remember what you just said about vulnerability? The same goes for this." Caroline's words sank into June's consciousness. Was she truly prepared to let anxiety dictate the timeline of her ambition? A cascade of her insecurities surged to the forefront. What if her voice faltered during the workshops? What if participants questioned her credibility? She exhaled, the weight of her self-doubt palpable. "Okay, let's pick a date," she acquiesced, surprising herself with the ease of her answer. "But we need to make sure we have everything in place. An agenda, materials, audience engagement strategies." A plan began to crystallize. They meticulously crafted session outlines, noting key topics and potential speakers who could enhance their platform. June felt an exhilarating rush. Each detail assembled was a step toward not just her vision, but her self-definition. This was not merely a professional venture. It was a confrontation with the fractured parts of herself that Marcus had made her doubt. As they worked late into the night, June's mind raced with thoughts of Marcus. Would he sabotage her efforts? She remembered new faces in her office, colleagues who had expressed support for her ideas. Could they be allies against his usual dismissiveness? The fortunes of her initiative suddenly felt inseparable from the dynamics of the workplace. What's next? Do we reach out to others now? Caroline pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. "No," June replied, uncertainty creeping in. "We need to iron out specifics first before I put myself out there." She felt the inner turmoil resurface, a battle between the dreamer and the wary realist. "Why are you hesitating?" Caroline prodded, her voice steady yet probing. "This is your moment to own. Embrace it." June took a moment to reflect on her motivations and fears. What if each workshop's success hinged on her ability to be intrinsically authentic? She had to be willing to share her own experiences of vulnerability and triumph, to instill confidence in those seeking guidance. It was a truth that terrified her. I think I need to confront Marcus." The words slipped out of her mouth before she could formally process them. Caroline's eyes widened, excitement tempered with concern. "Are you sure? He's not an easy person to take on." "I'm tired of his shadow hanging over me," June replied, a mixture of defiance and trepidation firing her resolve. "I need to declare my intent clearly. This isn't just about me anymore." Feeling a surge of adrenaline, she envisioned the conversation. Would Marcus roll his eyes? Would he smirk with disdain? The thought made her stomach churn, yet she understood that to truly lead, she had to be unyielding in her commitment to this mission. "I'll schedule a meeting," June declared, steeling herself. With a palpable shift in the air around them, she could feel the daunting weight of this impending confrontation. As she and Caroline finalized plans for the workshops, her heart raced, knowing that standing firm against Marcus would determine not just the fate of her initiative, but her own path forward. Having made the decision, Another wave of doubt washed over her. Was she ready for the fallout? The fear of failure hung over her like a dark cloud. But regardless of the potential turbulence ahead, June understood that this was her moment, a gateway to redefine her identity and purpose, a transition she couldn't afford to miss. The following day, as June prepared for the confrontation, she took a deep breath and reminded herself of a singular truth. The importance of authenticity was worth the risk, and perhaps, in the process, she would discover just how resilient she had become. The meeting with Marcus loomed on the horizon, and June couldn't shake the growing sense of urgency. The countdown to that moment began. But would she find the strength to emerge from the shadows of doubt and into the light of her own intentions? June sat at her desk, the clock ticking down the minutes to her meeting with Marcus. Each tick resonated like a pulse, amplifying her awareness of the stakes ahead. She gazed out of the window, seeking solace in the New York skyline. But all she could see were the myriad possibilities, and the shadow of Marcus lurking just outside her line of vision. The workspace around her buzzed with energy, colleagues typing away, conversations rising and falling like waves. Yet within this vibrant environment, June felt an isolating pressure building inside her chest. She stole a glance at Caroline, who was engrossed in finalizing the workshop agenda, oblivious to June's inner turmoil. Despite her outward composure, June's mind raced, strategizing her approach for the meeting. What would she say to Marcus? How could she convey her intentions without allowing him to derail her confidence? She needed to remain articulate, poised, and unwavering. In her mind, she rehearsed scenarios of what could go wrong: the scoffs, the sarcasm, the dismissive comments. Her palms were slick with sweat as she reached for a pen, twisting it nervously between her fingers. But another part of her emerged, one that was decidedly tired of the quiet resignation. This was an opportunity, and it needed to be seized. Not merely to confront Marcus, but to draw the line beneath the weight of his dismissal. With that thought, June's determination sparked. After a brief discussion with Caroline, they outlined critical points for the workshop pitch, ensuring her narrative would be clear and passionate. Relaying her lived experiences could be her greatest tool. She wouldn't shy away from her vulnerabilities. Instead, she would own them. As her time to head to the office of the notorious Marcus drew closer, the doubt that had plagued her all morning began to dissipate. She would not go into that room as a defeated employee. She would walk in embodying the vision she had crafted alongside Caroline. When she finally approached Marcus's office, her heart raced. The door felt heavier than she expected, a physical barrier to her intentions. She knocked, and his voice barked an invitation. June entered, a careful smile framing her lips. Marcus sat behind an imposing desk, a large stack of reports overshadowing his expression, yet his gaze pierced right through her. "Ah, June," he began, with barely contained indifference. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" She swallowed hard but refused to break under his scrutiny. "I'd like to discuss my plans for the upcoming workshops," she stated, finding courage in each syllable. Marcus leaned back, arms crossed, a flicker of amusement dancing in his eyes. "Workshops? Give me the pitch, then," he replied, almost mocking, eyes betraying skepticism. She took a steadying breath, summoning the passion she felt with Caroline. As she began outlining the value of authenticity, engagement, and shared experience, June became increasingly immersed in her vision. She cited studies, real anecdotes, and articulated goals. Every word became an arrow aimed directly at Marcus's impenetrable armor. But Marcus was unfazed. "You know these things tend to be academic," he interjected, tapping his pen against his desk. "People want results, not stories." June's heart sank momentarily, but then a fire ignited within her. "Stories are a vehicle for connection," she countered, firming her posture. "And connection drives results. We're missing the human element in our work." The surprising conviction in her voice caught him off guard. For a split second, His expression shifted from skeptical amusement to genuine curiosity. "Interesting perspective," he muttered, eyebrows knitting together in contemplation. "But I see potential problems. Tell me, how do you plan to draw attendance?" There it was, the invitation she needed. With renewed fervor, she detailed her strategies for engagement, collaboration with colleagues as participants, and real-life applications of the skills they would explore. Each idea spilled forth, fueled by the realization of what was at stake. This was more than a workshop. This was a reclamation of her narrative. However, Marcus's brow furrowed deeper, his skepticism undeterred. "Let's say I'm intrigued. What are you prepared to do if this doesn't pan out?" The question hung heavy between them, striking at the heart of her insecurity. She hesitated, an echo of doubt rising within her, but then clarified her stance. "If it doesn't work, I'll pivot, adapt, and try again. But I can't lead from fear." There was a moment of silence, tension swirling in the room like a whirlwind. Marcus's computing gaze was unwavering. "I'll consider your ideas," he finally relented, though his tone implied doubt. "Just know, if things go south, it's your responsibility." As she left his office, adrenaline coursed through her veins. She had confronted the specter of doubt head-on. Soon, she would face the workshops they meticulously planned, exposing her own triumphs and vulnerabilities. But for now, a single thought ignited her spirit. Did she have what it took to transform not only the narrative of her workshops, but her own identity? With each step down the hallway, she wondered if this was truly just the beginning of her journey toward self-empowerment, or yet another moment standing at the precipice of self-discovery with a future waiting to unfurl. Would she rise to the occasion, or would the shadows reclaim their ground? Days turned into weeks, and June found herself at the helm of the very workshops she had envisioned. Each session felt like a transformative experience, not just for her participants, but for herself as well. There was an undeniable electricity in the room every time she stood before her colleagues, woven narratives creating a tapestry of shared vulnerability. She could feel her confidence solidifying like concrete setting in a mold, as the experiences of her past merged seamlessly with the aspirations of the present. Step by step, June dismantled the fears that once held her hostage. She no longer cloaked herself in the insecurities that defined her earlier life. Instead, she shared heartfelt stories, moments where she had triumphed over self-doubt and found her voice emerging from the shadows. Each workshop echoed with collective laughter and insightful discussions, building a sense of camaraderie among attendees. Her colleagues began to reveal their struggles and triumphs, turning her initial vulnerability into a powerful connection that transcended the barriers of rank and hierarchy. Amidst this journey of transformation, she discovered the true meaning of authenticity. The feedback from participants swelled her heart with encouragement, each comment validating her unique approach. Attendees described how they felt invigorated to speak their truth, emboldened by June's willingness to lay bare her own experiences. She was no longer merely a maid in a mammoth mansion. She had become a facilitator of growth, embodying the very essence of change. Her efforts soon caught the attention of Ethan Carter, who unexpectedly joined one of the sessions. During a coffee break, he complimented June on her ability to draw people together. "What you're doing here is invaluable," he said, his voice genuine. "People need a place to express their stories. You've fostered that environment beautifully." Recognition from Ethan was both uplifting and grounding. June felt a sense of responsibility tighten around her shoulders, a chance to run far beyond the boundaries she had once accepted. Just as her confidence soared, Marcus approached her yet again. But this time, it was different. Rather than the mocking tone she had grown accustomed to, there was intrigue in his eyes. "You know," he started, a slight edge of genuine curiosity lacing his tone, "this actually seems beneficial. I didn't expect it to resonate like it has." The opportunity was ripe, and June felt the urge to challenge him further. "It's more than just a program, Marcus. It's about stripping away our facades and speaking truths that matter," even if they're uncomfortable. She looked him directly in the eyes, unwilling to back down. We can be better than what we were, even in a cutthroat environment. He nodded, the conflict in his gaze giving way to reluctant respect. Perhaps there's room for expanding this vision, he concluded thoughtfully. June couldn't contain her smile. Perhaps fresh opportunities awaited them both. As the final workshop of the season approached, June stood before the mirror in her modest apartment, reflecting on her transformation. She no longer saw the timid maid who had once hidden behind the walls of others' expectations. Each wrinkle of anxiety was smoothed by a growing confidence that sparked from deep within her spirit. Synthesizing her professional growth and personal achievements left her with an unshakable sense of fulfillment. When the day arrived, the exhilaration was palpable in the air. Participants streamed into the venue, each bringing their stories, their truths, their studies on vulnerability and authenticity. As she led them through one last session, June felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. Together, we've created a space where our stories matter, she addressed the room. This is our strength. The conversations we've had, the connections we've made, they breathe life into our professional narratives. As she concluded, the applause erupted like thunder, reverberating throughout the space. June closed her eyes, absorbing the warmth of recognition. It was a moment she had envisioned countless times, but had never dared to dream was possible. When the cheering subsided, Caroline stepped forward and presented June with an accolade, the Empowerment Award, highlighting her innovative impact on their professional environment. Throngs of her colleagues joined in the applause, and June felt tears prick at her eyes. Not out of sorrow, but profound fulfillment, a true testament to her perseverance and dedication. June had stepped fully into her narrative, no longer constraining herself to the labels others placed upon her. She had forged a path not only to personal success, but also to broader professional engagement. Her willingness to confront her fears had transformed into a beacon of inspiration for others. As she accepted the award, she realized she had not only reclaimed her power, she had woven a new tapestry of resilience for herself and those around her. The challenges that lay ahead felt less daunting, a mere invitation for continued growth and exploration. And as the echo of applause faded into the backdrop of her victory, June understood the truth of her journey. Empowerment isn't just a destination. It is a continuous commitment to authenticity, and today marked only the beginning of an uncharted path. Now, as a powerful catalyst for change, she was ready to take on the world, and she dared not look back. If you resonate with June's transformation and want more emotional stories like hers, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't miss out on exclusive content that fuels your spirit. And leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your engagement makes a difference. I want to hear from you. Comment your reactions and theories about her journey. Finally, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering conclusion. Don't wait. Even one more second. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of spreading the light of resilience.